Hey, I'm Siobhan, and I love talking about all the things related to freedom and personal growth. And I'm on a journey to redefine freedom on my own terms as I become the woman I desire to be. Each week, I'll share in real time what I'm learning as I do my inner work while creating a safe space for my listeners to feel seen. If you desire to be free and live a life that feels good to you, then you're in the right place for beautiful conversations that's going to support you on your journey to freedom. Welcome to the Siobhan J. Middleton podcast. Now let's start the show. Hey, welcome back to another episode of my podcast. I'm your host, Siobhan, and I'm so happy that you tuned in for another week as I share my journey on how I'm redefining freedom on my own terms. And my hope is that each week as you tune in, you will be inspired to show up for yourself and do your inner work. You may notice my voice sounds a little bit raspy. Typically, I record my episodes in the morning, but today I'm doing it at night, and so this is the voice that you're getting. So every month, I do a little recap of the previous month and some of the things that stood out and share what I'm learning, how I feel, and all of the things. So from the title, you can tell that I'm going to talk about solo dating, myself, and the Lauryn Hill concert, and then therapy. And then as I'm talking, there may be a few things that come up for me that I didn't think about until I started recording. I am intentionally dating myself. And this feeds into what I talked about last month as it relates to leaning into pleasure. And I took myself on a date at the beginning of the month to this restaurant called Batuku. I could be pronouncing it incorrectly, but it's a Brazilian restaurant. And y'all, the food was absolutely amazing. So much so that I'm like, I'm definitely going to Brazil because I want to eat Brazilian food in Brazil. So that is now on my list. But anywho, I got dressed up, and even though it was raining, I still decided to go because I had made a promise to myself that on this particular day, I was taking myself out on a date. And I chose a seat right next to the window. And the restaurant is like a house, but it's been converted into a restaurant. And it's so cute. And so, it has a really warming atmosphere. And it's just a whole little ambiance. And I was able to look outside, and it was raining, and then the lighting was very dim, and it was just a whole mood. And I ordered every single thing that I wanted. And I had some type of Brazilian stew that had fish and shrimp. Oh my God, the flavors, the layer of different spices. Oh my gosh, it was so good. And then I had a salted caramel espresso martini, chef's kiss. And then I had dessert, which was a coconut cream cake. And when I tell you, my taste palette, everything about my dinner was pleasurable, which that made me feel so good that I took very good care of myself. I allowed myself to get exactly what I wanted. I wasn't cutting no corners at all. And I just sat there, and I, again, looked out the window. I also took a book with me to read. And after I took a couple of pictures of my food, I put the phone away so I wouldn't be distracted by that. And I was really just in the moment, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And this past weekend, I went to this art exhibit by myself. And it was my first time at this particular location. It was called the Sculpture Center. And it was on a Friday night. I got there by myself, looked at the art, and I ended up going back home. And it was just a whole vibe. So why is it important to date yourself? For me, I'm getting to know myself in a deeper way. And it is comforting in this way to be by myself only. Not that I don't like going on dates, because I totally do. But there's also something beautiful with just dating myself and doing what I want to do and spending time just with me. And I'm specifically doing things that I want to do and going places that I want to go, you know? It's all about pleasure for me and getting out of my comfort zone and really getting curious and exploring new places and having new experiences. And I'm sharing this because I know typically people don't like to do things on their own, like whether it's going out to eat or going to the movies, but there's so much beauty in that. And I believe I shared a few months ago how my friend, she had finally took herself for the movies for the first time, and she really, really enjoyed it. And I believe she's in her late 40s, and this was the first time that she had ever went to the movies. And for me, I'm just exploring what are the things that I want to do. So I'm making a list and thinking about, okay, well, where else would you like to take yourself on a date? Because I think going to the movies or going out to dinner, those are always like easy things. But what are some new experiences that I want to have? So I want to take a pole dancing class. I want to do a pottery class. I feel like I've shared this before. I want to discover more new restaurants and trying different dishes. So I definitely want to do that. So I'm just allowing my mind to explore. I believe tomorrow night I'm going to go to a concert by myself, which I'm really excited about. So I'll have more to share about that later. But I'm saying all that to say, take yourself out on a date. Get comfortable with your own company. And don't just feel like you have to wait to do something with your friends or your lover or your boyfriend or your spouse. No, you can do some things by yourself. And that's totally okay. I am having a good time, okay? This past weekend, I was invited to see Lauryn Hill in concert in Chicago. So my skate friend and I took a road trip, and it was so much fun. And this is the thing. I have so much to share. I didn't want to do an IG story on this particular experience. Like I really wanted to talk about it on the podcast. First and foremost, I am a Lauryn Hill fan. She is one of my favorite artists, okay? And I feel like I manifested a dream because I knew that she was going on tour, but I wasn't sure how I was going to get there. So the fact that I was invited and in Chicago, which I love Chicago, it was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best ever. And I'm like, wow, Siobhan, you get to see Beyonce and Lauryn Hill in the same year. Like, what is life? So I was geeked about going. And I have been watching a lot of TikToks, and I've seen over the years, people have been complaining about her tardiness and complaining about the way that she's singing the songs is not like the album. So I had already been prepared for that. And what I learned as it relates to why she sings the songs a little bit differently than on the album is because she doesn't own the rights to the music. And that breaks my heart because I'm like, I just wonder who was in the room with her at that time that made that decision that she would not own the rights to her own music. And I don't know how this works, but the fact that she doesn't, and yet the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is a classic. And the concert was to celebrate the 25-year anniversary of the album. And it saddens me that this is her body of work and she doesn't have ownership of the music. Now, what I give her credit for is that even though she doesn't own the rights to the music, she's still going on tour singing her songs. And the way that people complain about it on TikTok, for me, yeah, there were times where I couldn't sing along because of the tempo of the song or something like that. It still sounded amazing. And with the live band, it's just a different feel. And then being in a stadium, I was vibing out. Like I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Now, let me kind of go back as it relates to the tardiness. The show was supposed to start at 7:30. I believe she got up there on the stage around 9 something. In between, while we're waiting for her, there was a DJ playing all the good music. So you're not just sitting there. There is a DJ playing music, which is cool. Her tardiness is not a big deal. I think people are exaggerating it, and I don't like that. Beyonce was late, if you will, to her show. Like, she got up there like an hour and a half late than what it was when it was supposed to start, right? And if you look at TikTok videos and stuff, she was late in every city for the most part. I know in the US, that's just a part of it. I don't know, maybe people have been to shows with Lauryn Hill and maybe she was later than that, but to me, it was not a big deal. Was not concerned at all about the tardiness because typically artists are not getting on stage at the time that it's supposed to start. I absolutely love both albums, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill as well as the Unplugged album. And I don't think the Unplugged album gets enough credit. Hands down, that album, I listen to it often, okay? And it is one of my favorites. She did not sing any songs from that album, which I get because this was a 25-year anniversary for The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill and also the Fugees. I was not a big Fugees fan. I knew the songs that came on the radio, so that part of the show, yeah, it was hype and all of that, but I was more excited to see Lauryn Hill. A couple of the things that I noticed, and this is me, whenever I'm at a concert, I'm taking a lot in and I can feel energy. And so, yes, I'm present at the concert, but also I'm taking in what I'm experiencing from the artist. So she did address that she had a cold, and I know she had to cancel the Philly show, which was right before the Chicago show. So her voice wasn't at its best. And there were moments when her voice was going in and out, and I'm like, can somebody just give her some hot tea or something? But she did all the songs and she did all the music. And even with her voice cracking at times or going very raspy, which she already has a raspy voice, but going very, very raspy, still, hands down, it was great. So a few things that I was picking up on. The reason why I brought up the Unplugged album is because I specifically remember on that album that she said the issue that she had with the industry and being a musician is that the entourage that she had to have with her at all times and everyone that she had to pay to create her art, right? And I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much how it went. And so then I'm looking at her on stage and the very thing that she wasn't pleased with that she talked about on the Unplugged album is the very thing that she's doing. And it saddened me because I'm like, I wonder how she feels now. And what I mean by that, as I was watching her, she didn't look like she was happy. Like it was a totally different vibe that I got from when I saw Beyonce in concert. And I'm comparing the two because I went to see them both this year, and they are both two of my favorite artists. And Beyonce seems to be very grateful for where she's at. She seemed to be very happy and full of life. And Lauryn Hill, she didn't seem happy to me. But then I looked at her and I said, it takes a lot of courage to get up on the stage. And even when your voice is not its best, you're still performing for us, right? For your fans. And the other part that I was thinking about, that even though she doesn't own the rights to her music, she still figured out a way to perform her songs. So I'm like, there's a lot of power in that. And as I'm watching her on stage, I wonder, is she happy? Or if she's just doing this because of the money? Is she really fulfilled? I just had so many questions, and I said, I wish I could sit down and talk to her and have an interview and just explore how she feels today in performing these songs and being on stage and having the entourage and all the people. Is this how you want to create music and perform? And I'm, again, bringing this up based off of listening to the Unplugged album. And I think that this is something that we all have to explore. And I've been talking about this for the last several weeks. What is it that you really want? And why do you want what you want? And then how are you going to show up in the world doing the very thing that you want? And so overall, I enjoyed the concert. I'm very grateful that I was able to attend. I feel for me, I've only needed to see Lauryn Hill once. Like, that fulfilled what I needed it to fulfill. And I wish her the best. I don't have any bad thing to say about the concert. When I look at comments online, and not just about Lauryn Hill, I think we need to see people as human beings. And I think so often people are so quick to criticize. And it's like, well, have you ever been late to something? Have you got on stage in front of thousands of people and performed? Like, we need to see the humanity, right? And I love Lauryn. I always will. And I will always be listening to the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, as well as the Unplugged album, and then other songs that she released. I would love for her to put out another album, but I understand if she doesn't, But overall, it was an amazing concert, and it just made me check in with self. And this is what you guys keep hearing me talk about, because again, and this is my mantra by Viola Davis, the purpose of life is to live it. And every day I have to ask myself, am I living my life? And ultimately, what I'm asking myself is, am I being free? Because that's the most important thing to me, and that's what I want for everyone. And my hope is that Lauryn Hill is happy. I hope that she is free. And if not, I hope she gets there, So lastly, I wanted to talk about therapy. And you hear me mention therapy all the time. It was just brought to my attention, and I didn't even realize it. But I have been seeing my new therapist for 3 months now. And I intentionally chose a new therapist to work on myself. Every time I've been to therapy before, it was for someone else. And now I am going solely for me. And this has been an enlightening experience. I'm so grateful that I chose the right therapist at the right time. And I remember our very first session, she asked me, what was I looking for in a therapist? And I said, I need to be challenged. I need you to ask me questions, because that is what helps me, because I don't know what I don't know. And so I'm just living out my life. And then I need someone to help me slow down and ask me questions so I can reflect and think, okay, what is true and what is not true. And then I need feedback. And I need to be held accountable. So that's what I told her. I needed to be challenged. I needed her to ask me questions. I needed to be held accountable, and I needed feedback. And she is doing exactly that. This experience with this particular therapist, I am processing childhood trauma and trauma from my marriage, and then also processing things that are happening in my day-to-day life. So you can only imagine how heavy this is, right? And ultimately, it's to help me navigate in such a way that ultimately I am being free in every aspect of my life. But I am not there yet. Now, there are some places in my life where I am more free than other places. And so we're doing a lot of inner work for me to become free overall, if you will. So with this particular therapy, I'm learning how to manage things and situations in my life by setting boundaries with myself and with other people. I am learning how to effectively communicate, because I have a tendency to avoid. And sometimes I can be defensive. And so I have to learn how to get curious, how to set boundaries, how to thoroughly express myself and communicate in a healthy way. And y'all, I got to tell you, this work I'm doing, it's intentional and it's necessary. And yet it's the deepest work I've ever had to do. And there is trauma that I'm aware of, that I know I have to work through. But there's some trauma that she has brought to my attention that I am afraid of. I'm a little bit nervous because I didn't even know that this particular relationship caused trauma. But based on what I've shared with her, she can see it. And the goal for me is to become healthier and get to know myself. And the only way that I'm going to do that is to be able to process the trauma. And the tools that we are using, and you'll have to look this up if you're interested, is EMDR and internal family systems. Again, do your research to learn more, but those are the modalities that I'm using to process the trauma that I've experienced. And so it's work. And I am very grateful for this work that I'm doing. We both, my therapist and I, can see the progress that I've made over the last 3 months. But then we also can see where I need to build a muscle and get stronger in some areas. And I can see it, like, as I'm talking to her every week, I'm like, oh, Siobhan, you have a tendency to avoid things that you don't want to talk about. Okay, we got to work on that. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, that in my marriage, it felt like I was asleep. And over the years, I was slowly waking up. And then once I woke up, it's like, oh, I have to get out of this. It's the same thing in therapy as I'm learning about myself. It's like I'm waking up to myself, if that makes sense. And I'm starting to see me. And you'll see me post this on Instagram all the time, how much I love my life. And I truly do. And I think a part of that is because no one is controlling me anymore. Like, I am in control of myself. I am living my life how I want to live it. And that feels so good. That's why I can say I love it here. And that's what I want for everyone. Like, I feel like everybody needs to be in therapy. You know, like, there's so much that we can learn about ourselves, and you don't have to go to therapy just when something is wrong. Maybe you go to therapy because everything is right and you want to have someone to share it with, and they can help you process and navigate it, you know? But that's where I'm at. So I am grateful for therapy. I'm grateful for the feedback, being challenged, you know, and the accountability. And every week I'm taking notes and I'm processing and then applying what I'm learning. And some things I apply a little bit later, but I'm working on it. So that was my month of October. I enjoyed these recaps. I think they're really fun. I would love for you to rate this episode 5 stars and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I feel like I've heard you can do the same on Spotify. So if you know how, do that. You can leave a comment on YouTube. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you're inspired by my work in any capacity, you can treat me to a cup of coffee. And that link is in the show notes. Thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone that does that every week. And please subscribe to my newsletter. The link is in the show notes, where every week I share my heart with my readers, and also things that I feel that are worth sharing that sometimes I don't get a chance to share here on the podcast. And there's 2 different options. You can become a free subscriber,
where you get my weekly newsletter. And then if you become a paid subscriber for $10 a month, which is amazing, which is cheaper than lunch these days. But anywho, you'll get the weekly newsletter plus some extra stuff from yours truly. So all of that can be found in the show notes. Share this episode with a friend. And let me reiterate, because I haven't said this in a while. My podcast is for men and women. It's for anyone who needs to be inspired to redefine freedom on their own terms. So when I say share it with a friend, share it with whomever, text them the link, share it on social media, tag me. I appreciate you so much for doing that. Sending you so much love and light, and I hope you have the most amazing day ever.